Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review. I'm here today to talk about Black History Month, the month that is a celebration of my people, because I am a black man and everything. And it's about all our accomplishments, all the oppression that we have gone through over like centuries of living in like America and stuff like that. So I'm here today to talk to you about Mantis series review. So Mantis came out in 1994. And this was a show that like literally took 3 years to film because the lead actor was on another show called Night John. And so with the show, like it aired from like 94, 95. However, it was on the Fox network. And the last two episodes appeared on Sci-Fi in 1997. I remember watching this as a kid, and I remember thinking to myself, where everybody go? Because after the television pilot movie thing, they literally recast it. Well, they fired the entire cast except for the lead, and they recast a bunch of other people. But the thing that they did that really surprised me was like, just like the title says, this was originally supposed to be a black-centric show, a primary black show with a black superhero. And in the pilot television movie, it was like so many black characters in that movie. And only like a few, like maybe like two white people, something like that. Like it was very shocking to see something like that for a superhero show, right? But then when they made the actual television show, everybody was white except for two black stars, like the black lead actor and like this one like female lead and stuff. They completely whitewashed the show. And this show is considered the very first black superhero show. Although Mantis, played by that of Carl Lumbly, he's considered to be the very first black televised like superhero, but that's not necessarily true because there's been those in animation. But if you stop and really think about it, Zack, the Black Power Ranger, he was actually a black superhero a year prior to Mantis coming out. He wasn't in the very first black superhero television show, but he is technically, in some ways, the very first black live action superhero because his show came out in 1993. But for some reason, they don't credit him as that. And I remember when watching also, not, I was also like, when I said I was surprised that the show went like completely white, but the last two episodes never aired on Fox. And so I've never seen the finale. But in a shocking turn of events, I can't believe the stinking network did this. They killed off the black lead and the black female lead. So the show literally killed off all the black stars, and they killed the main superhero. What kind of television show does that? I've rarely ever seen that happen where the superhero dies in their own television show. Like Buffy survived, Blade survived his television series and movie. It's just so shocking because it's kind of like, what the heck? It's like they really seriously just did not care. And this was back in the early 90s, and the 90s weren't that bad of a time in terms of race. Like, yeah, it ain't perfect, but it wasn't as horrible as like the 50s, 60s, or 70s and stuff. And I do wonder why they killed him off. I speculate it's because Carl was not happy with the show. Him and other cast members have literally stated that, like, when I go into what the TV pilot was about, you'll understand. But because the movie had like a primary black cast, it dealt with like racism, misogyny, um, real world type problems that this superhero tried to like solve and everything. And that was very rare back in those days. You just did not see that. Nowadays, you see that a lot, like with the show Black Lightning that used to be on the CW. And so when they changed the show and they made it more white friendly, I guess you could say, it rubbed him the wrong way and everything. And and he was displeased by that. And so I bet you anything, somebody who worked on the show is all like, oh, you don't like that, so we're just gonna kill you off and everything. Not caring about the audience that this show like gathered and stuff. Gina Torres, who was also in the television pilot, I guess the movie pilot, you'll say, because there are two different pilots. There's the TV movie pilot, and then there's the actual TV pilot. And she was in the movie pilot and got completely fired and everything. And it's like, many, 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 many years later, she talked about her, sadness about like, how the show eventually morphed into and stuff like that. But it wasn't just that they got rid of the black characters, they got rid of the black themes, they got rid of the black social issues and stuff. And then the television show became more of a generic episodic superhero show where he's fighting off against like corporate criminals and a visible dinosaur that killed him in the finale, time travel, parallel dimensions, and just all kind of like generic superhero stuff. And so here's the thing, I'm completely fine with them making the television show more like episodic and more superhero based, because he is a vigilante technically, but he was never like a superhero type person. But I'm okay with the superhero aspect of it. But what I'm not okay is when they got rid of all the like black problems that the television movie pilot dealt with. They still could have incorporated that in there to make it work, because like with the television pilot, the main superhero character, he works for like this lab type thing, and he created a virus, and now his ex-partner stole the virus and started using it as like a bioweapon and stuff. They could have easily just said that they tested it on like the poor black community and stuff like that. That could have been like a nice blend of both from what the movie was about and the television show was about. But they completely went against that. And they could have kept it like, the movie had him fight like more low level criminals, corporate people, and show how they really screw up the black community. They could have been like a corrupt scientist, a doctor, a police officer, a lawyer, something like that, that made him go out into the field and try to get like, justice for like the black community and stuff. But they completely robbed the show of that. And the movie was filmed, I think, in LA. And I had a feeling when I started watching the show, I'm just kind of like, well, now when I rewatch the show, I'm just kind of like, I bet you anything they filmed in Canada. I bet you anything. And yep, they did. And that also explains to one reason why they whitewashed it. Because if you ever watched a Canadian show, and I've watched a couple, they're predominantly white with maybe one or two black people. They make sure they get one dark skinned black person and one light skinned black person. And that's basically about it. And even American shows that are filmed in Canada, they do the exact same thing where the majority of the cast is white. And like, you'll have like a couple of people of color. Even in still modern days, like with the Batwoman show, they did that. And so that really explains a lot as to why all you saw like tons of white folks like in the show. And the thing is, I don't care if the show is blended, but when the show premise is about a predominantly black like city and black themes and like corruption on black folks and stuff like that, you need to keep that the front and center of the television show. And when they didn't, it alienated people because the pilot movie was well received. It wasn't perfect or nothing like that. They could use some polishing here and there, but for the most part, it is very, very good. And if you don't know nothing going into watching the movie, you are completely shocked and surprised and everything, especially when you find out who Mantis is. Because Mantis is Miles Hawkins, a play on Stephen Hawkins, because he's a man who's paraplegic in a wheelchair. And when you watch the movie pilot, you don't know it's him. You know he's a scientist trying to figure stuff out, but you have no idea he's this vigilante going about town because how the heck is he able to walk? And he's paraplegic. And they have a red herring in the movie where you think it's this other black character who's big and buff and no martial arts, but he is literally just a red herring and also one of the villains and stuff. And so you get like, Miles's like backstory and like all this other stuff, and then you find out why he does what he does. But the pilot movie was so clever to keep that hidden until it was time to reveal it. And then when you found out like who he is, you're shocked and surprised. It's kind of like the Mantis is kind of like a cross between Daredevil, who is blind, Batman, who's a vigilante, and Iron Man, who's a tech whiz and everything. And when you watch this, like, there's a reason why it feels so Batman centric because one of the people who created it worked on Batman Returns and stuff. And so the people who created it, well, at least who created the pilot movie, was Sam Raimi and Sam Hamm. Sam Raimi, of course, is very famous for Spider-Man. He did the second Doctor Strange movie, The Evil Dead, Hercules, and Xena. In fact, some of the cast members in this show and in the movie went on to play characters in Hercules and Xena. And Sam Hamm, of course, did Batman Returns, and you get that Batman feeling like he has an underground lab that's underwater. He has an exosuit. He has this like really fancy vehicle that also can fly and turn into like a sub. He doesn't use weapons that are lethal, and he doesn't want to like, well, Batman will hurt you, but he doesn't want to hurt nobody and stuff. And I still can't believe what they did because when you watch the movie, you have your black centric superhero, right? Then you have Gina Torres, who's like this forensic scientist and stuff. And she's like your primary female who is trying to figure out like who this mysterious man is in a wheelchair and like who this mantis person is she's interacting with. You have this black news reporter who's trying to figure out who the mantis is. You have like this nightclub owner who is like, who acts like a nice guy, but is really like bad. You have like this rec center coach type person who's trying to get black kids off the street and like, and keep them busy so they won't mess up their lives and everything. You have a corrupt politician who is targeting the black community because there are a bunch of gangs there, and every time there's something violent, that he thinks it automatically is gang related. You see two gang wars and everything, and it's just so real. You know what I'm saying? And then they go to the television show, and it's more of a generic superhero show. You have like this British white guy who is now like his assistant, and it's kind of like the Arrowverse. This is like a precursor to the Arrowverse, where like the white British scientist, he is on a computer talking to him on a mic While and it feels like the white scientist is like the boss, and he sends the superhero out into the field, and he's constantly talking to him. There's tons of camera shots where it cuts scenes from the field action to back on the computer, and him telling the superhero like what to do. It's literally like he's the one calling the shots instead of the other way around. And I used to hate that crap in their Arrowverse and everything. And it all started like here. And then there's like this quirky, wacky, like white guy who's like a bike courier who somehow figures out like, Miles is like Mantis and everything. And it's just kind of like, why is he even in the show? Like, he doesn't serve no real purpose and stuff. But since he's so front and center on everything, it's to make a white audience happy and everything. Then they did add in a black female, but instead of a forensic scientist, now she's like a cop played by a completely different actress. And they had the nerve to kill both the black characters off. And I'm just kind of like, what kind of bull crap is that? It's Hollywood being racist Hollywood and everything. But Hollywood, they look at it as a business. They think to themselves, okay, who consumes more comic books and everything? White people. Who watches more like television on Fox? White people. So they think to themselves, okay, white people aren't going to watch this black centered show. So we have to make it pleasing to them so it doesn't hurt their eyes and everything. And have a bunch of kids go, mommy, mommy, mommy. This black person scares me on TV. Well, don't you worry, son. I'm gonna write an angry letter to the network and everything. And that's like how television used to be. I've said this before when it came to Star Trek, the original series that came out in the 1960s. So much of that show from the original pilot and everything and the actual show was reworked to make white men happy. And I'm not even kidding. They put the black woman behind like the captain so you wouldn't see her. There was this one white actress who was in front of the captain. They took her completely out the show and everything. Then when it comes to the Klingons, the Klingons, the one with the brown skin and those like ridges on their forehead and their crooked teeth and how they're always like barbarians trying to kill people. I always assume Klingons were based off of black people because they're brown and everything, but they're actually based off of Chinese people. So the writers and creators literally mocked Chinese people every time there was a Klingon on there. And when there was like a Klingon actor, they would write an offensive Chinese or offensive slur or whatever on the chair that had to do with a Klingon actor because the Klingons represent Chinese people. That is how racist Hollywood is. And literally they kept reworking stuff on the show because they said, well, you know what? We don't think white men will like this and everything. And they always got to make them happy and stuff. And so that's what happened with this show. Something that was for us, for the black community, was literally whitewashed to make them happy. And Fox and other networks have done this before. I've stated this other times with black comedies and stuff. They will have a black comedy to bring in a black audience. Then when they bring in the viewership numbers they need, they will either cancel that black series or they'll bring in a bunch of white people and stuff and fire some of the other folks. It happened with Malcolm and Eddie in Living Color. I can't think. I think maybe Martin lasts for a pretty long time. And like in Living Color, Living Single, Fresh Prince, and all these other shows. But the thing is crazy about this, they assume white people aren't gonna like black shows, right? Take New York Undercover, a urban show with a black and an Latino lead. And you had other blacks and Latinos in there. You had this one white lady with blonde hair. And it was very urban. There was lots of people of color, and white people loved that show, which shocked and surprised the people at the network and everything. And what did they do? They killed off the black guy, and they started bringing in tons of white characters and stuff, and it ruined the show because these people in business suits think they know everything that what people want to watch, but they really don't know nothing. And I hate studio interference on this level because once again, it's a somebody in a business suit who's trying to make a certain group happy, and they end up ruining something. This could have been something really huge. And since Mantis has gotten canceled, there's never been a reboot, never been an animated series, never a comic book, nothing. It's just completely gone and like forgotten about. Now, one thing that's really sad, other than them screwing this show up, is so many of the main cast have passed away. Some died in the 90s and others in the 2020s and stuff. There's only a few that are still alive. And I'm just kind of like, holy crap, this is like the majority of the cast. I just can't believe these people are dead, man. Like, this is just sad. And so may they rest in peace and everything, because that's some grim stuff right there. And so when it comes to that of the main cast, you have Carl Lumbly. He plays Miles Hawkins, who is the Mantis. You know, Carl has been in so many things, like in live action, way before like his days of voice acting. And like, of course he was in Justice League, the animated series, as the Martian Manhunter. But he's appeared in Batman Beyond, Superman, the animated series. He's gone on to like play John Jones, the Martian Manhunter's like father in live action in Supergirl. He's voiced Martian Manhunter's brother. Like, he's been in some DC animated movies. And now you can see him in the MCU as Isaiah, the first person to take the or the first black person to take the super soldier serum, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And on February the 14th, you can see him in Captain America: Brave New World. The man has been in so many things. And so when it comes to this role, see, he's American born, but his parents are that of Jamaican. So he has a very strong, thick, like, Jamaican accent. And you can hear it in the movie pilot. However, when the TV show came around and like, they started adding more white characters, I started to notice something from the beginning towards the end of the series. His Jamaican accent was pretty much all dropped. It was lesser, you could barely hear it. And there are times where you couldn't hear it at all. And I'm just kind of like, man, they even stripped that dude of his voice and everything when they changed the series around. But when it comes to that of Miles, he was a scientist and he was a black conservative. And for those who might not know what a conservative is, if you might be from like another country or something, it's basically a Republican. And over here, Democrats and Republicans do not like each other anymore. They can't stand each other. But when it comes to that, the black community, black liberals who are Democrats and black conservatives who are Republicans hate each other. They legit hate each other. And so, like, he looks down on, like, say, the black community. He does not believe in affirmative action. He believes that all it takes is a smart mind to get in college and stuff like that. Because he got into college, his father got into college, he became a scientist, so he doesn't believe that, the only thing that's well, he believes that the only thing that's holding the black community down are themselves and everything. This all changed when he was driving around one day and he saw some riots, and the people doing the rioting were black. And the police were out there trying to stop it, but they were stopping it with their guns. And so he sees a little kid like crouched down, so he goes to save that kid. And as he's running with the kid, he gets shot in the back by a police sniper. And when he goes and sues the police for this, he lost his case. And when he lost his case, he was shocked and surprised that the system did not protect him because, he wasn't a gangster. He wasn't a bad person. He was a high society type man with an education and with a degree. And he couldn't believe that the court system, with the video footage evidence and everything, did not protect him because the bullet that was used were not police issues, so they didn't believe it came from a cop. But they knew it came from a cop. They just didn't care because they don't like prosecuting cops when they go around shooting unarmed black people, which is something you saw around the 2020s and stuff with the Black Lives Matter movements. And so this infuriated him to where he created the mantis, and it changed his like political views and stuff. And so when he became the mantis, he didn't go around just stopping like all crime and stuff like that, because in the pilot movie he didn't have like super villains and monsters and stuff like that and time travel. That was in the TV show. It was more of a means to prevent what happened to him to happen to other people, especially that in the black community. And in the movie, there are tons of gangs, and even though the gangs are made up of different races, the majority of the ones you see are black. And so he knows that, like, every time something happens, politically, they like to blame it on the gangs and everything. Gee, does that sound familiar to you? When something happens, they blame it on a certain race. So since the majority of the gangs are black, he knows they're going to be a target. So he tries his best to like prevent this from happening. And there's a corrupt politician who is white, who is pretty much trying to get reelected. And if he can blame it on the gangs, technically the black people, then that makes all the people happy and he gets reelected. So he's trying to stop corruption in that way. And because of that, he doesn't use lethal force. He uses these darts. And basically he shoots them out from like the top of his wrist. And when they like hit somebody's like, body and everything, it freezes them. Now in the movie, they have more of a unique design to them. And when they hit you, you automatically just freeze. Like it's very interesting when you just like moving around, but then you freeze like within seconds. But then in the TV show, the design changed to be a more bigger, blotchier look. And when it hits you, there's like this green electrical thing that hits your body, and it takes over 5 seconds for your body to stop, as opposed to 1 second in the movie. Now his costume is completely different from the movie and that of like the television show. In the movie, he wears a completely different mask. It's smaller, and it shows the top of his hair. Also, like there are like these light thin green lenses in the eyes, and then there will be like, this shield thing that covers his eyes, and then all of a sudden the shield will turn bright green with the lenses, and he has the ability to hypnotize you. And he does this twice in the movie. This was completely retconned in the show. It doesn't do that. Then as for the suit, okay, so technically in the movie, he has an exosuit. It's basically black spandex, and it has these silver metal pieces to it that are like electrical and stuff like that. and it can short circuit if it's hit by water or if you hit it hard enough with metal. And we see that in the movie a couple of times. And I like that weakness because it shows he's not perfect. Also, when he puts on the exosuit, it takes him a while to get his mobility and he staggers around. Now, there are technically two suits in the movie. There's a okay, the exosuit. The black pieces are made of rubber when it's in statue form, but when they have to put it on him, of course, he can't move around in a Batman rubber type suit. So they made it out of like really thin spandex. And over his exosuit, for some bizarre reason, he wears a suit, a tie, and a trench coat. I have no idea why. And it's kind of an odd look. And I just don't know how I feel about it. I like the trench coat. The trench coat is kind of like a dark green kind of color because you know mantises are green and stuff like that. And I just don't know about that look. It just doesn't look cool enough for a superhero. Somehow Christopher Nolan made it work for the Scarecrow, but the CW couldn't make it work for Batman in Gotham Knights when Batman just wore a regular suit and had his cowl mask on. And so when it came time for that of the television show, they completely redesigned it. The mask is a heck of a lot bigger and has bulkier metal pieces, and it has like a cap on top covering his hair. Gone are the green lenses, and the actual black exosuit, it has more silver pieces to it, but this time it has foam padding and everything, which gives it a bigger, bulkier type look and stuff. And I actually kind of prefer this if he was going to go out and fight crime because it's more superhero like. I do miss the trench coat, but I don't know how it will work on this outfit. Maybe a cape will work better, but I don't know. Now, in the television show, it's a little bit odd. They have him, like, when he does his superhero poses, or when he's crouching around at night, they have him stand in a very awkward, like, way. And then when they have him run, he runs in a very turkey jerkish type way. And when he leaps around in a very odd way. It's very distracting. I'm not sure why they do it. But then when you stop and think about it, they probably show that, hey, even though he's in this exosuit and like it now gives him the ability to walk. Maybe it's not like perfect to where he's kind of stagnated when like he runs, jumps, and like stands. And I can understand that. But then in other scenes, he's standing up completely straight. And so, like, also in like the movie, he will leave a calling card, like a little silver mantis, and he'll leave it like, sometimes he'll leave it in a person's mouth after he freezes them. And like I said before, the reason why he freezes people is because he doesn't want to hurt nobody. But also he doesn't want the cops going around shooting people who might be armed or acting violent and stuff. And if it shows that they're completely still, he's hoping that, they won't like shoot them and stuff. Now, as for the transformation of like the suit, in the movie, they had a bigger budget, so they was able to do a whole lot cooler stuff. So basically, he's sitting in his wheelchair and the suit comes out the wall. Somehow the suit just comes on his body and they don't really show it how, but they show how the mask comes on his face and stuff. And it's really a very Iron Man like type thing. Like there's like a little head statue. It opens up. It has the mask. It mounts the pieces on his face. It's really cool. In the television show, they don't really show nothing. Somehow he just like puts it on. And like his vehicle is known as the Chrysalis. And basically it's just like a Cadillac, but then it transforms and morphs into like this silver futuristic looking car that can drive around on the road or fly in the air or be used as a submarine. And it's really cool because in the movie, like for a TV movie budget, they did a lot and it looks very realistic when it's flying around. Except for this one car chase scene, it looked really fake because the rendering was not good enough. But in the third act, when he's having a fight against, like, well, when he has to save Gina Torres' character, like she's like on, like, on the top of the car and it's just rising above because somebody threw her off a building and she landed on top of the flying car and it just like hovers up and you see her and it's like really cool. But the third act, when he's going up against the police and like they're in helicopters and they're shooting at him and he's just flying around, that looks straight out of the Batman movie. And that's because somebody who worked on the Batman movie was the co-creator of the TV pilot movie. It's really cool how they blend practical effects with a little bit of CGI and everything. It looks amazing. For the TV show, they mostly just use stock footage. It doesn't look as great, and there isn't too many, like, close-up views, and I'm pretty sure it's all CGI. It works for a cheap TV budgeted show, but it's not as cool as the movie. Now, the design of this is interesting because years later in the late 90s, there was a show called Batman Beyond, created by Bruce Timm and his creative team. And his Batmobile can fly, and it has a very unique shape, very similar to the Mantis. And we know that Bruce Timm and his team are like huge comic book nerds. And they even had Carl guest on their show before and also be a part of Justice League animated series. Gina Torres was also on Justice League Unlimited, where she played Vixen and stuff. And it's interesting because her character, um, that's in the Mantis movie, her outfit is very similar. Well, I'll get to that a little bit later. Now, in the movie, we don't see him ever doing hand-to-hand combat. He's mostly just like in the shadows type person. And when he's flying around in his car, he'll have like a cable attached to his back. And like he will like just hover through the streets shooting the bad guys with his darts and everything. In the show, he's more mobile. He does hand-to-hand combat and stuff like that. It makes sense for the television show for him to do hand-to-hand combat and other stuff because if he was just going around in every episode being attached to a cable and just shooting people with darts and like immobilizing them, that would make for a very lackluster superhero show. And like I said before, like I don't mind the superhero aspects of the television show. I just wish if that's what they were gonna do, that's how the movie should have started off as. But it didn't start off that way. So it like, distanced itself from the fans that like the movie. But they should have had like a blend of both that would have like made people more happy, would have made the movie people happy and the comic book nerds happy. Because when you watch the show, it's very reminiscent of Nightman and Scorpion, two sci-fi low-budgeted superhero shows that came out. One was syndicated, Nightman, and the other one was on Sci-Fi, Black Scorpion. And it has that old school, like, silliness the comic book shows before they started getting a little bit serious. Now, I explained to you why he became Mantis in the movie, and then in the TV show, they do show the clip of him getting shot. But what doesn't make sense, in the beginning of the first episode of the television show, he's fighting some bad guys, and you hear his voiceover narrating, talking about like the scientific journal of Miles Hawkins. In the event that something happens to me, those will want to know why I became like, the Mantis and stuff. And he said in reality, he never became it. He said the mantis demanded to be like created and everything, and I could not refuse him. What the heck does that even mean? That's like something out of a comic book, and that's the vibe that the show was taking and stuff. It doesn't make no sense because he literally became it because of the injustice of the that happened to him and how he doesn't want to see it happen to anybody else, especially that of his own community. Now, when it comes to that of like the anagram of the suit, mantis and everything, like in the TV show and in the movie, it's completely different. And in both cases, it stands for mechanically um, augment neural transmitter. Now, this is the part that differs. In the movie is interception, and thinking the show is interaction, and then in both cases it's system. Why they changed the anagram and everything, and what the meaning of like the suit function is, I have no idea. Now, his like base of operations is cool. It's like an underwater lab that's underneath his mansion. And that's really neat. Like I like that. I wasn't even expecting it to be underwater and everything. But like I said before, in the television show, it's a little bit differently. He has now like his own laboratory. He used to have like a partner who's using his tech for like bad stuff. And in the finale, they killed him and the only other black character who later became his love interest by an invisible dinosaur. I kid you not, an invisible dinosaur. Him and his entire team, along with that female cop, him and the female cop was inside the car, and he decides to sacrifice their lives by killing the invisible dinosaur. He tells her he loves her. He unleashes the gas, sets the thing on blaze, and it blows up, killing the invisible dinosaur, leaving his British partner to like monologue and have the closing ending of the show. That is some low down mess. Killed off the superhero and killed him with an invisible dinosaur of all things. An invisible dinosaur. That showed you how little they cared about him. Oh, I just don't know what to tell you. I just don't know what to tell you. So Gina Torres plays that of Dr. Amy Ellis, and she's in the movie pilot only. And so she's a forensic scientist who's trying to figure out like what exactly is freezing these like gangsters and stuff. And she's kind of like the Lois Lane of the show. And back to this whole Lois Lane thing. In the movie, she happens to wear a purple suit, like a business suit, along with a black skirt. Now, what's interesting about this is that when Bruce Timm was coming up with Superman the Animated Series, he gave Lois a very distinct purple suit with a white skirt to it. Very similar to that what Gina wore in this movie. And so like she is very smart, she's very determined, she's very headstrong. And all throughout the movie, they show how men degrade her. Men just like they treat her like a woman, like like a secretary and everything, and she doesn't like it. They're very misogynistic towards her. And at times they can be a little racist. Like this one dude who was like, the police chief, he even told her, you're literally just an affirmative action like hire, aka a DEI hire and everything. This is, like I said before, what made the show and the movie completely different. It was the bias and racism that the movie had, with characters towards that the black race and stuff. And so she pretty much a lot of the male characters like her and stuff. Like this one dude who she works alongside with, who's a news journalist, that nightclub owner she started to like and everything. And but for the most part, her and Mantis don't really like, they don't have really no romantic interest. But when she goes in to try to examine a body that's been like, frozen and stuff, they won't let her in for some bizarre reason. Once again, she thinks this is because of her gender, and she forces herself into the room. And when she's there, she's shocked and surprised to see two African assistants and a black man sitting in a wheelchair. And so she becomes very curious of the black man in the wheelchair for some reason, and she starts doing some background on him along with the journalist. And that's how she discovered he was one shot and all this other stuff. And so, pretty much, her main love interest is the guy who works at, like, the nightclub, until when she's cooking for him, she discovers that he has a certain drug. Now, this drug was used to kill, like, certain, like, gang members and stuff. That's something else that she was investigating when she was in the morgue. And because she wanted to see if, like, the tranquilizer darts of the mantis and this drug was like similar, but they wasn't. And so when she discovers that, he tries to, like, kill her and everything, only for the mantis to save her. Towards the end of the movie, Mantis gives her a cell phone, and kind of like, like what the Adam West Batman did for, like, Commissioner Gordon. Because he sees her as being an ally, that's somebody he can use out in the field and stuff. Now, I've seen Gina Torres in a lot of stuff. I assumed the first thing I saw her in was Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, but apparently it was this show. And she even co-starred in Cleopatra 2525, where she was the lead. She's been in other stuff like the Suits spin-off, and, like, she starred alongside her now ex-husband, Lauren Fishburne, in, like, the Matrix movies and Hannibal. Lieutenant Maxwell, played by Galen Gore or Gork, she replaced Gina's character. Now, instead of a forensic scientist, now they introduced a cop with a completely different name. Also, may she rest in peace. She died of cancer. So sad. She was in a lot of stuff too. She was in Xena, Star Trek, multiple Star Trek different shows, and just so many other things. And so, like, she is a very tough, no nonsense type cop. And she has, like, an attitude, and she later becomes the love interest of that of Mantis. In the first pilot episode, she gets infected with the virus that Miles created many years ago. Well, when the series pushes on, she becomes his love interest, and like I told you before, she dies with him by an invisible dinosaur. Her and Coral were the only two black folks on the show, and they killed them off. Marcia Cross was in the TV movie pilot, and she's one of the few white people in there. And she's the head of, like, the newspaper company or the journalist company that is, like, excuse me, investigating, like, Mantis and stuff. He uses his hypnosis on her. And I assumed the first thing I saw her in was Melrose Place, but no, it was actually this. And of course, she went on to Melrose Place. She was in Desperate Housewives and everything. Bobby Hosa. So he played Yuri Burns, and he is the journalist trying to investigate the Mantis and all this gang activity and stuff. He's there for comedic relief. He also has a crush on Amy and everything, but she doesn't have one back. And so towards the end of the movie, Mantis also gives him a cell phone, because he believes he can use him also in the field. Wendy Raquel Robertson and Christopher M. Brown, they played two of his African scientists in the movie pilot only. They assist that of Miles when he's doing his scientific stuff and also when he does his mantis stuff. They mostly stay around in the laboratory. They have a quirky type personality to them. They also sometimes will speak African, but I don't know if they're speaking real African or is this just Hollywood bilingual language or they just make stuff up. And whenever he's hurt in the field, they hop around in a van and they pick him up. And they also make sure they're not seen. As opposed to the television show when they are replaced by John, played by Roger Reeves. He is the British guy I told you about earlier, and he is pretty much the scientist who helped create the exosuit. He stays around in the laboratory, always instructing Mantis what to do and how to do it. And there's always a cut scene from Mantis in the field to him on the computer and him talking on the mic. Very Arrowverse and everything. And the assistants didn't do that. They mostly just stayed in the lab and you just saw Mantis out in the field. Now, when Mantis does get hurt in the show and John goes to save him, he also does it in a van, but he lets himself be seen and even talks to the public. And that's how that one bike courier knew who somehow figured out who Mantis was, because he figured the tech must have came from this company and everything like that. And also, may he rest in peace, because the actor died of cancer as well. And what's worse about the John character is he is the one who created the exosuit. And he is also the one who created the immobile darts that make people freeze. Because in the pilot television one, Miles asks, how did you do that and everything? When yet it's Miles who is the one who created all that stuff in the movie. This is so insulting on so many levels. It's basically saying a black person is not smart enough to create that. Taylor Savage, played by that Christopher Garton, he is the bike courier. He was introduced in the show as the wacky friend of Mantis and everything. Sometimes he's out in the field to help around. I don't understand the purpose of this character. He's meant to take the place of one of the African assistants and everything, but he's just so wacky and annoying. And because the studios thought you would love him and everything, because he acts just like one of y'all and everything, but he was so annoying on the show. Also in the TV show, the guy on the bicycle who befriends them, he is the one who names Miles Mantis. Miles can't even do it himself. He did it in the movie. It's is this really worth it just to make certain people happy? To downgrade somebody? And once again, it's very Arrowverse because in the Arrowverse, this one dude named I forget his name in the Flash. The one dude who became Vibe, Cisco, he's the one who's always naming people and stuff, and he's always the one on the computer and assisting and stuff like that. Now, Steve James, may he rest in peace, he played Antoine Pike, and he's that club owner who was working with the mayor guy and drugging these gangsters and also supplying them with weapons and stuff. Basically, he supplies them with that. They go out and do something stupid, and so that way the mayor can blame it on them and get reelected and stuff. He was a red herring in the movie because you assumed at first he's Mantis because of how big he is, muscular he is, and he knows martial arts and stuff. But it's later revealed that he was really, a co antagonist. Solomon Box was the former partner of Miles who goes around using his experiments and stuff to harm people. He was first played by Byron James, may he rest in peace, but later portrayed by Andrew J. Robinson from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Now, in the movie, he has this one assistant that helps him with his like therapy and everything. And I don't really know her name, but she tells him that her son wants to be like Mantis, and he tells her, "Well, I wish I could be more like your son." In the show, she is replaced by Lynette. She is his sassy housekeeper, played by Lorena Gale. May she rest in peace. But then, to save money on the show, they completely dropped her character. Now, I'm not sure how to say this actor's name. Oba Bebe Tootie. He played Cornell, and Cornell was a person who worked at the youth center to help their younger kids stay out of trouble and stuff. He is the one who first finds out about Pike, with the drugs and everything, and he takes him hostage or just ties him up. And Philip Baker Hill, he plays Smitty. He's the misogynistic racist who tells Gina's character, Amy, that she's only an affirmative action hire. Also, may Philip rest in peace. You might recognize him as, the police captain from the Rush Hour movies. So, yeah, the very first black superhero show literally got ruined because of studio interference because they tried to make it look more like them. And I've been wanting to talk about this series for a very long time, but I could never find it on YouTube. But they had but you can find because it's not on streaming, but tons of people have uploaded the television movie pilot, and one person has uploaded the entire series, and one other person only uploaded a few episodes and stuff. But in 2009, they actually put this on DVD with both pilots on there. And it's quite a shame because, people don't talk about this show no more. It literally has been forgotten, and newer generations literally have no idea what this is about. But it's crazy because if they was to make this show in modern time, you already know people are gonna say this show is too woke. We don't see no white people in it, so we don't want to watch. Like, why there's so much DEI in this show? And it's so woke, it hurts and everything. Like, you will literally hear that from a bunch of bigoted people and stuff. And the craziest thing is, these people, if they were to go watch the TV movie pilot, they will see back in the 90s, hey, it was pretty woke back then and everything. So it's not just like modern days. And if they were to make it in today's time, a lot of reboots aren't that great. But they're rolling back on DEI now, so you'll never see nothing like this now. But the closest thing you'll probably have is like Black Lightning, and that show got canceled, and it was on the CW and stuff. And there aren't that many black superhero shows out there. You had Black Lightning, you had what was that other one I forgot called? It was live action. I can't even think. See, there aren't even that many out there. I can't even think of them and stuff. But there was another. Oh, Luke Cage and everything. And well, technically, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is not a black centric show, but it's a black centric superhero. So that kind of counts, but not really. And you know what was so great about watching this show back in the 90s? I did not have to hear the N word or any type of variation of the N word, which nowadays That's literally all you hear every 5 minutes and stuff. And it gets so annoying because not everybody uses that word. And then when non-black people hear that word, they just like itch so bad because they want to like use it so bad. And they act like if they don't use it, the whole world's going to come to an end. It's a disgusting slur. You can use any other word you want. What is so special about this word? I will never understand. Happy Black History Month, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Bye.